like to smoke that much. But it did it. As soon as she gets over like 800 RPM, which she's idling way low right now, as soon as she gets over 800 RPM, whoa, just right up there. But I'm trying not to do that. I don't know, this is one hell of an adventure. This one's for me. This one's to figure out what the hell happened. Still have oil. It went down a quart, so it's either burning oil, it's got some sort of light frothy thing in it. But how is it burning oil when all we did was got more coolant? I'll turn this fan off. I'm just analytically looking at this because the last time this thing ran was at 7 stock. It had the same oil system, same approach to everything. Now it has coolant, and there's green coolant, which none of us put any coolant into it. That's a concern. I need to add text gauge of voltage. See if the alternator's working. It's pretty easy to do that. Oh, I don't even have oil pressure on here either. This is a 2 I'm gonna watch right now. Oil pressure at 12 volts. Interesting, I see oil just flying out of the, just to show you guys. Interesting. Wait, why would oil be doing that? Maybe I put too much oil in? Oh no, there's something wrong. There's something wrong with the oil system. Hold on. Why? Why are you doing that? Why would the oil system be doing that? But that means the oil system is overpressurized. But there's none in here. Let's think about this. The oil's not getting scavenged. Is it blocked? Or the engine's generating pressure? The engine's pushing oil out the backside. The last approach is simple. It's just start it. That's something. She wasn't responding to throttle input like at all. Wow, I'm fascinated. So fascinated. I'm none at a loss for words. I just don't know how to diagnose this, other than it being fucked. I'm gonna look at the logs. So it's holding pressure in the coolant system because it's warmed up. No coolant in there. All water. No oil in there. And there's like an oily surface to it, but like, so then what does that mean? That means the car's burning oil? How the fuck would it do that? Well, time to do some bloodletting. This is one of those things where it was the worst possible scenario, but it was a scenario that was possible. I didn't want anybody else here to experience it with me. My moment, I've earned it, and I mean that even in a good way. Considering this is the worst case scenario, like there's nothing worse, and I mean that in a good way. I have parts of an engine to replace. Not a whole engine, not a whole car. I'm not gonna be surprised at what we see. I'm just surprised that we have to do this soon. It's gonna be green tinted oil, and I don't know what the green's from because we only use water. When this car was still just the Montego blue car, a Mazda service manager took my car home when I was getting it fixed, and he blew a coolant seal. So I had not blown an engine until the 3-rotor, but I'd seen an engine blown, and what it was doing was taking all of the oil and putting it into the coolant system. That was a stock system, it was a stock FD. This one's clearly aftermarket. Dry sump being a whole aspect of it. Where's the failure? What's broken open? What's not sealed all the way? What's causing the issue? So if that's water and oil, then that makes perfect sense. We'll just stop there. Nothing good comes when you try and fill it more. So it looks like there's water separation. I mean, it does not feel like oil. It feels like oil this way. I'm gonna let it sit. Oh yeah, that's watery. I'm gonna let it sit and see if it separates. Oh fuck, oil's gonna go to the top. I mean, what else could it be, really, you know? can't tell if that last part looked oily or watery. A weird smell to it. Like a burnt, like pine tree-ish smell. You can definitely see like distinct oil. That's fascinating, whatever that is. Those little chunks are just diatomaceous earth on my hands. Well, that smells so... I've smelled that before. Like pine sol or something. It smells like actual grease. That's what it smells like, grease. Even though the water system doesn't pressurize, it did pressurize by itself. What the fuck's green? The coolant system is just not green. Time to use the clear view to what its advantage is. I'm gonna blow some air into it so we can get the extra oil water out of it, and then take that top off and see what's in the screen. That's not really the issue, or it's gonna help diagnose the issue, but baby steps to getting my mental sanity back. There's some shit in it, as long as there's not bearings. Is that Elliot? Yeah, it's Elliot. Gotta break the bad news. Talked with Elliot for a little bit. He gave me a breath of fresh air, a chance, possibility that there's a reason for this that's not just a clear blown motor. And honestly, he and I both came to the same conclusion. It's backwards. There's something backwards about, you know, normally you start pressurizing your coolant system with your oil and you get tons of oil in your coolant system. I have nothing in my coolant system. There's nothing. Water in my oil. And then he said, well, you check your freeze plugs. And if you guys remember, I put the 4 freeze plugs in and didn't seal them. I pushed them in. I was like, okay. I don't know how those would get into the oil though. And then he said the front one. And I'm like, well, the front one's the front iron. I'm like, wait a second. The one behind the front cover. My heart sank. I'm gonna go ahead and watch some of the old footage of me putting the oil pan on and putting the front cover on to see if that was installed. We're gonna do what we have to do anyway, which is drain the oil. That's already, halfway happened. It turns into draining the coolant, rinse and repeat, and see if the problem occurs again. It's all a diagnostic process. Watch out for those washers, right? This is my most interesting part. There's grease. Well, there's red stuff, but that's not bearings. Oh, it's the shop rags. Great. And this stuff just straight up smells like grease. The red shop rags aren't allowed to be used anymore. We can go ahead and put this back in. Live to die another day. For this one, I'm just straight up putting the diatomaceous earth underneath it. No, I was right. Wow, I guessed something ahead of time for once. That looks just like good oil. Weird. That's like straight up just good oil. Look at that, that's just oil. Okay, maybe not. I'm just gonna set this one aside. There's no water in that stuff. Baby steps for diagnosis. I just took this off. Some sort of milkiness inside of there. And then the turbo is leaking this. And the reason I know that is it's coming from here. The only place it could be the turbo. Not sure why it's spinning so slowly. Concerned as to my oil feeding and returning. The oil pressure sensor gets 45 psi. So there's oil going in. What I'm starting to notice here is with the car running, it's dumping oil out of the downpipe. You see those 2 puddles there from the car shifting. That might be my smoking gun. Literally, not a pun. Well, it's also a pun. A turbo only does that when one situation occurs. There can be multiple causes, but it's one situation. That means that this line is getting oil. It's feeding oil to the center rotating assembly at about 45 psi at idle. It then goes through the bearing system and then goes down the return. In a normal situation, that return line is just like a drip and it goes into your oil pan. This is a dry sump system. In this situation, whenever we've ran tests, we're always running it with a drill, with the engine off, and of course it generates an insane amount of vacuum, which should, not just in theory, but in practicality, pull oil from the turbo. The turbo itself is generally at atmosphere right now. That line has to have lower pressure, and for some reason, it doesn't. So that means while the car's running, there's engine blow-by or something that's overpowering the scavenge, or something to that effect. There's more pressure in there than there is in the turbo, and so then, of course, the oil goes out the turbo. This could be my answer as to why I'm having problems. You have all of these lines sucking, like, it's not just oil, it can't be. Oil in should be oil out. You can't create oil in the engine. As expected, there's oil. The return line itself isn't the problem. It's the pressure in the return line. Definitely have to replace this one. I don't want to leave it exposed. This is probably my favorite part of this car. I've drained the last bit of oil out of the dry sump system. I'm gonna refill it, start hand cranking it over again. And the reason why, I wanna verify that the turbo return line, not connected to the engine, works. You know, never assume anything, even though it's a straight line and it's a very straight and open setup, you just never know. In this case, I'm using Valvoline's VR1 2050, not product placement or anything like that. Obviously, a lot of products will work. Oh, there we go. It's definitely working. The scavenge system obviously still works because the oil drops into those, oh shit, oops. Oops. I was gonna leave it open, which is what I was about to talk about. I didn't realize the obvious next thing to occur. Pumping that system got a little harder than I was expecting. It was time to improvise. I want it to spin this way, or the other way. Oh, it's working. That did something to prime the system, I hope. We've made some serious progress very quickly on why the oil system is giving us so many problems. Talked to Carl briefly, and he's like, oh mate, shit's fucked. It was so many words, but we're over here, and look at this. This is a difference of 12 AN to 16 AN, and that is not even the smallest restriction. That is one of the restrictions that go from the pump to the clear view out to the other tank. The issue here that we're hoping is that we're just causing too much back pressure. You know, the gas is escaping from the bottom of the pan. That's why it's backing up and causing the turbo to back up. We're gonna route past the clear view, all 16 AN. We'll see if that resolves the extra pressure. Isaiah made it in time before I started playing with his toys. Then we're gonna add the wideband. That will give us a wideband O2 sensor right after the turbo. Dave and I are working on kind of a mix of the coolant system and the oil system all at once. We're gonna pressurize the engine block of the coolant system and see if there's a problem there. It's kind of an engine vibe check. It was cool, I could see it glowing through the inside, just the slightest bit.
Oh yeah?
Baby turbo. That looks like one of the stock twin turbos.
This is the same size of the turbo as my car.
I have a feeling we're gonna put it on the car.
It might leak.
What? How? Don't do me like that.
This isn't billet, it's cast.
Oh, okay. It's inferior metal. We're putting together the wideband O2 as well, because all the tests are coming out positive for the coolant system. Everything's holding pressure. We're probably 15 minutes in, and it's still at full 15 PSI. The coolant system is not leaking. It was just simply pressurizing and adjusting. So I feel so much better. I'm new to the dry sump system. I took my AEM setup out of the 3-rotor and putting it into the 4-rotor temporarily. So taking the sensor out, taking the gauge out, because it's already set up to work with my Adaptronic. One thing I still don't have fully locked down is getting the alternator working properly. Is it really?
Yes, sick.
Oh wow.
Look at the curve over there too.
Yeah, you can
That's
it's either too much timing.
Yeah, because we're like 2 teeth feet over from the last mark on the left side.
Is
So-
it? It's firing though.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God, you could just hear the hints, just the hints of woof, and that was at 2,000 RPM. It sounds like 10 times higher than that just because of how many rotors are firing all at once. This sounds crazy. We're taking tons of timing out of it, oddly enough. The header is no longer glowing red. That's a good thing. It's starting to respond. We still have plenty of issues to deal with. Okay,
You have to get next to me.
I can get next to you.
Let me get a vibe check.
Camera's going back off for a second. It's not gonna take long after that one.
I'll do this all night. I don't care.
I am definitely not a positive contributor to the environment. I try, it incites my attempt, but we just blew through 5 gallons of gas with only minutes, and I mean like seconds, minutes of of idling. You run this engine at 10 AFR, and it's just, I watched on the last, we've only ran it 4 times. On the first section, the fuel pressure just started nosediving, so it's good that we stopped here because it is bone dry. Even better. We need to add some more coolant, but it's starting to cycle, and you can see it's pulling some heat off of that engine. We weren't getting a full cycle earlier. Kind of sucks, but no damage. We didn't get crazy with it. I love that pump already, though.
Yeah.
What we're gonna do now is fire it up one more time, try and get the alternator working.
You want to see something? As you were moving it up,
Yeah.
the highest you went was a 1.5
We're gonna call it a night for tonight. We got the timing figured out, but then alternator stopped working again because I just need to wire it in properly. I don't know what that plug is. We'll get that going. The last 2-3 times that we were adjusting and playing with timing, it wasn't that good because the alternator was dying, so we were getting down to about 11 volts, and that's not good for the ECU. That's not good for any the ignition, anything. All the footage that you hear tonight, the most we got up to is 3,800 RPM. I actually wanted to stop partially because my poor ears. I mean, if I'm gonna go deaf, this is the way I want to go deaf, but oh my God, this thing's an absolute animal. Absolute. I forget that this thing is also gonna drive shortly.